because the Mets, it's really two things. One, made a news that we all expected very much, that is that Terry Collins is back for a couple more years. Two, they put the ribbon on last year and begin what is a very important offseason. Will be for both baseball teams in this year where we don't have either team in the postseason. Sandy Alderson is the general manager, the man who will be calling the shots, and he joins us now. Sandy, welcome. How are you?
Hey, Mike. Doing fine, thanks.
All right, Sandy, other than Terry, did we make announcements about the rest of the staff or anybody else, or just the manager?
Yeah, the rest of the staff is coming back as well, so we're pleased about that.
All right, so everybody comes back. What would you say a day after the season ends? How would you describe the season in both good and bad terms?
Yeah, from a negative standpoint, obviously the one-loss record is nothing to write home about. We won 74 games, the same number we won last year. We're certainly not happy with that, and that level of success over the course of the season is just not acceptable long-term. Additionally, we didn't play well at home, which is always a concern. Number one, most teams play better at home than on the road. Secondly, you'd like to play well in front of your own fans. We had some players that underperformed or were inconsistent, as well as some weaknesses that were exposed over time, in some cases from early in the season, others somewhat later. But, on the positive side, we had a winning record on the road. We were actually a 500 club the last 100 games. We played, we were 50-50 or 49-49, something like that. Over the last 100 or so, we were a 500 club, which isn't going to get you in the playoffs, but is, a far cry from being 14 or 15 under. So, I think that was a plus. I think we responded to some of the difficulties we had. We added some players from our minor league system over the course of the season. The pitching held up pretty well. The bullpen was better for most of the season than it had been. So I think, there were a number of positives, but ultimately it's about the one-loss record, and we didn't play well the first couple of months of the season, and it was tough to dig out of that hole thereafter.
Sandy, I thought that one of the big keys to this season was making sure that you went into 14 with no question marks about Harvey, Wheeler, and Denard. We know Harvey and everything he accomplished beyond anybody's expectations. Now the injury, we know that. Right. In your mind, did the other two, Wheeler, I'd say, is probably pretty much a foregone conclusion he did. Did Denard establish himself in your mind as a guy you can count on as a regular next year?
Well, Denard, has been touted as an offensive catcher, and so aside from the fact that he just hasn't played that much, I think coming in we assumed that he would hit fairly well and that catching maybe needed some additional work. Actually, he caught really well. The pitchers took to him almost immediately, and that was a positive. Initially, at least, he certainly didn't hit particularly well, although if you look at his last, I would say, 20 to 30 at-bats, he only had 112. So, the last quarter of his season, he was hitting right at, maybe a little above 300. So, look, we've got a number of areas we have to improve, but I think at this stage, we're locked into Darno, not financially, but I think that's the commitment, and I think we're reasonably comfortable with that. In your mind, have you made up your mind about guys you needed to make up your mind about? Have you made up your mind about Ike and Duda and Tejada, or is there still some question marks and some things to be worked out with those three players? Well, I think at first base, you have to have to be honest with yourself and say, look, I'm not sure we have learned everything that we need to about those two guys, but ultimately you have to make a decision, and sometimes you don't have full information when you do. So, going into next season, we've got really three possibilities at first base. One of those two guys, neither of those two guys, or both of those guys, in either, at the major league level or at the AAA level. We're getting to the point where we have a sample large enough to try and make a choice. We're also getting to the point where they're not inexpensive. They together next year they could cost, $4 million plus.
Right.
So we're at the point where we need to try to make a decision. Another factor will be, frankly, the trade market. What is the market for a first baseman with potential and power and the potential to be better? These guys are. Ike is not that old. So, anyway, we're getting to the point where we need to make a decision on those two guys or going in a different direction entirely.
All right. How about the shortstop? Do you feel you have a shortstop? Can you put Tejada at short and be comfortable, or do you need to go out and look at shortstop?
Well, I think the problem is that you can't go into the season with 3 or 4 below average positions. You can get away with 1. Maybe you can get away with 2 if your pitching is really good and you've got the offense elsewhere, and maybe they give you defense at average or above. You can't go into the season with a bunch of positions that are below average. So we assume going into the season that, let's say, center field, where we're comfortable with Lagares defensively and his, not just comfortable, but excited about what he brings defensively, although, his offense remains a question. Well, okay, we can live with a guy who's sub-average offensively at one position. Now you look at shortstop and say, well, can we get by? You can't get by with multiple positions that way. So, we've got to look at it that way. And it's not as easy as just saying, well, we got to improve the shortstop position. We probably do. Could we go into the season with what we had last year? Well, we got by with Quintanilla and Tejada and so forth, but that's not what we're trying to do next season. So it's definitely an area we have to look at.
All right. You mentioned Lagares, Dendecker. Any idea of platooning them in center field next year, or do you want to see one of them win the job?
Well, right now I'd say Lagares is ahead of Dendecker. It's hard to overlook the defense that Lagares brought, even though Dendecker is known as a solid, above-average defensive center fielder. Dendecker has always needed to make adjustments as he moves from level to level. He didn't have a lot of time at AAA this year. He didn't have a lot of time at any level because of the injury. So I'd say right now, Lagares is very definitely ahead of him. And Lagares made some improvements offensively over the course of the season, but regressed a bit the last month, and just needs to be. He's got to be a little more selective. He's got to get into some hitters counts, and we strike out way too much, and he's another guy that does that.
You broke record striking out this year. We're talking with Sandy Alderson about the Mets going forward. Any of the guys who were here late? Did Matsuzaka, with his excellent pitching late, earn himself a chance to come back? Black is a guy. Hawkins pitched well. And I guess I should start with Parnell. It sounds like from the situation he's in, he doesn't sound like he might be ready on opening day, huh? It sounds like he's got a lot of work to do just to get healthy again, huh?
Well, he does have a lot of work to do. I don't think that it's going to relate specifically to his injury. I think it's going to relate more to putting weight back on and getting, physically fit. I don't know that the injury is going to be the deterrent as much as his overall conditioning, but certainly has to put a question mark in your mind going into next season. The comfort I have, though, is that, we used several guys in that closing role. We started the season, Francisco was going to be the closer. He never made it out of spring training. Parnell got the job. He got hurt. Hawkins did a very nice job for us. So what I'm hoping is not so much that we have to settle on a closer, and that's critical for us. What to me is more critical is having the depth of arms in the bullpen that will allow us to respond to injuries and those kinds of things. And we just haven't had those arms because we haven't had them coming through the system. We've had to rely on guys we bring in as minor league free agents. If you look at the number of minor league free agents we brought in last year just for the bullpen, we had Torres, Rice, Burke was a guy we brought in as a minor league free agent. Hawkins was a minor league free agent. Atchison was a minor league free agent. We actually did okay in the guys that we brought in, but we need to have more depth in the system, and I think we're starting to get that. Vic Black helped us out, that acquisition. I'm hoping Jeff Walters, who pitched Double-A for the most part last year, will be a help. We just have to have more contributions from the system, and the pitching is just getting to the point where it can help us at the major league level.
Putting the pitching aside for a second, Sandy, how many guys do you have in that starting lineup that you feel very comfortable about, that they're blocks that you can build on? I mean, do you see it as Murphy, Wright, the catcher, and the center fielder, and you'll build around those four? Are those the guys, or you have more than that right now?
Well, if you were to say who are the position players who are championship caliber
that you're happy with for next year?
Yeah, happy with, assuming that we're looking for a much better winning record.
Right.
Well, the only guy that I would put in that category right now is David.
But that's not realistic. You're going to change every position. So, with that being the case, I mean, can you say that Denaud will be there and Murphy will be there and Lagares will be there? Is that reasonable?
Yeah, I think those are all very likely circumstances. Yeah.
Okay.
Your original question was,
how many at the top level? Only one, right? Okay. But I mean, you're okay with if you have Murphy at second base, you can live with that, right? I mean, if you had a 90-win team, an 88-win team, he can be your second baseman.
Yeah, I think that's right. There are things that Murph is outstanding in many ways. I mean, he's the only guy really who played a full season. Was among the league leaders in hits and what have you. But, the on base needs to be higher if he's going to hit second. It would be nice if his slugging were a little higher. Like we've got an OPS of 7.25. That's not elite status. So, and then there's the defense to take into account.
Right.
And, he's not.
It's okay.
Not a league leader in that category.
No, he doesn't turn a good double play, but otherwise he's okay. He's decent. He's workmanlike. He just doesn't turn a great double play.
The great thing about Murph is he plays hard every day. He's a great teammate. He hits well at Citi Field, which is not a given for a lot of our guys.
And he hits in the clutch.
There are a lot of pluses there.
Yeah.
And certainly he could be a member of a championship team. Absolutely.
So when you look at this right now, and next year, we're going on the premise that you really want to make a elevated jump next year, where you hope to contend next year, right?
Yep.
Okay. With that being the case, how many serious guys do you have to acquire in the lineup in trade and in either free agency? Is it 2? Is it 3? Is it 4? What do you look at? Do you have a number?
Well, the first thing, we're actually going down to Florida this afternoon to start our meeting. So, some of those issues will be addressed over the next couple of days and then, ensuing days and weeks. But I think the first thing you have to do, Mike, I have to do is, what is our jumping off point? What is our platform here from which we need to improve? And one of the things that is easy to miss is the fact that we played pretty good baseball the last 3 months of the season. The last 100 games, we were 50-50, I think. So, So we played 500 ball for, 2/3 of the season almost.
And very good on the road, winning record.
Yeah, so that's a pretty good place to start.
Right.
Playing 500 baseball is not going to get you in the postseason, but it's not like the last couple of years where we've tailed off. And I think the big difference between the last couple of years and this year is that about the time the team would start to tail off in recent years, we got an influx of players. We didn't have an outflow. So we had, if you go back to those 100 games, the first of those games was the 16th of June. I think that's the first game that EY Jr. played for us. The third and fourth games were that Super Tuesday when Harvey and Wheeler both won games in a doubleheader in Atlanta. So the platform, from my standpoint, is not that bad. We've got a decent place from which to start. But it's about improving the team as a whole and not any one position. And we have to look at it that way. I mean, it's conceivable. And again, I'm not saying we're going to do this or not do this. The money that we have to spend, you could spend the majority of it on one player. You could spread it around. There's a variety of ways to do it.
Do the Cleveland Indians interest you in how they did this, or are they fortunate in some way? Because when you look at them, they don't have a star anything. They don't have a star closer. They don't have a star starter. They don't have a star in the lineup. I mean, that's an interesting team when you think about it. I mean, they won 90 games. They finished red hot against a weak schedule, and they won 15 of their last 17 games. They won 92 games, but they don't have any stars anywhere on that team.
Well, two things that jump out at me, and I'm not a close observer of what they've done over the last 3 or 4 weeks. But as a whole, number one, they signed 2 free agents. They signed Swisher. They signed Bourne. Together, those 2 guys probably cost them $30 million per season, roughly. And even though there are people who say, well, Bourne didn't have a great year, he gave them the defense they were looking for in center field. Swisher had a decent season.
Yep.
But the other thing that happened is that they really came out of nowhere with pitching.
Yep, they reclamated some guys.
Yeah, I mean, that Kazmir pitched great for them. Yep. I don't think they could have reasonably expected that.
Kluber
has come through their system, which is a developmental project, but has done a nice job. Jimenez,
yep.
Had a season that he hasn't had in some time. So, you do have to get fortunate from time to time. But look, they made the investment, and I think they're probably, in terms of how they're put together and their progression from last year to this year, probably closer to our situation than Boston.
Yeah, Boston had some really good players that just bounced back too.
Plus, they spent a lot of money. They spent, just to add to their payroll this year, they spent almost $70 million. Now they had a lot of capacity because they got rid of, Crawford and
Gonzalez,
and a host of people.
Right.
But they invested pretty heavily, and it's paid off for them, which is great. But I would say, just given where we are and the capacity, the payroll flexibility we have, a team like, as you point out, a team like Cleveland's probably a little more instructive than a team like Boston.
Do you have to dabble because of the Harvey injury in starting pitching in a real way, which is very expensive, or can you stay away from that, either find a reclamation or 2 as veterans and go that route, or do you have to go a little more serious and allocate some of your financial assets towards a starter?
I think what we've got to do is we've got to make sure we have enough pitching depth. I'm not sure we need to go out and, in fact, I don't think we will go out and try to find a number 1 starter.
No, but I mean, even a guy who's a veteran 500 guy is expensive.
Right.
If he's an innings eater, if he's a 200-inning guy, if he's got a winning record, he costs a good amount of money.
Right. Well, I think that you have to really assess the market. So, for example, Matt Suzaka pitched pretty well for us after he got going.
After the first 2 starts, he pitched very well.
Yeah, so what's he going to cost? I have no idea.
Nor do I. Or Harang as a guy like that, you know?
Look at, a guy that we signed to a minor league deal last year, Carlos Torres, pitched pretty well for us, too, if you look at him.
Well, look what a Liriano did this year, or a Kazmir did this year out of nowhere. I mean, look at guys like that, you know?
The thing that it would be nice to get away from, Mike, if we can, is the guy coming back off an injury, who may get injured again. You're taking a risk. So you're taking a risk on performance and health. If we can, at this point, taking a risk on health, unless it's a very low-level, low-cost risk, that's why a guy like Matsuzaka is attractive to me.
Would you invite Santana back if it didn't cost much?
I think that's a possibility. Yeah, I don't really know what Johan's thinking. We'll talk to him, I'm sure, over the next couple of weeks. But I think he wants to pitch. But again, we'll just have to see what the market is for these guys and how much of our resources we want to allocate to somebody coming off injury or somebody you hope is able to pitch for you at a higher level.
You are a pitching-rich organization. We're talking with Sandy Alderson on the day after. Does the Harvey injury preclude you from putting a young pitching stud in or prospect in a deal for some power? Is that now out and you have to go free agent, or is that still a possibility?
I think it's still a possibility, but I do think you have to be a little more careful about it with Harvey out, because as it stands right now, we've got three guys going into spring training. As we sit here today, three guys you could count on.
Right.
Neese,
Wheeler, and G. Right.
And Wheeler.
Right.
Now you've got Mejia, you've got Montero, DeGrom, Torres. But to get through a season, given our recent history, you've got to be 8, 9.
8 deep, right? 8 deep anyway, right?
I mean, look what happened this year. We were pretty deep, and we ended up having to sign Matsuzaka and Harang in the last month of the season just to get through. So,
is it fair to say we're going to see a at least bona fide power hitter somewhere else in this lineup who's a proven commodity next year?
Well, fortuitously, we ended up with that kind of guy this year with Marlon Byrd.
Right.
I think definitely we have to replace that production, but we've got to go beyond that. So that's certainly something we'll look at very, very strongly. But other clubs are looking for the same thing. So,
do you have? I mean, a lot of people wonder, and there's that big question of how much of the money that has come off the books will the team be able to spend? Are you fairly comfortable you'll have what you need to get the job done available to you without giving us what the exact number is?
I think we're going to have enough available to make significant improvements. No question about that. If you go back and look what we actually spent on free agents over the last 3 years, it's been not minimal, but modest. Last year, for example, just on free agents, I think we only spent about $5 million, and most of that was tied up in markup. Now, that's not minor league deals that may have turned into a $1 million base major league deal, but just major league free agents. So certainly compared to that, we're going to have significantly improved resources. But I expect that we'll have plenty to work with, and just have to see how the off season goes.
Is it possible that this team can go from 74 to 88 wins without Harvey?
I think that's conceivable. I think the reason it is because of what I said earlier. We won 100 games. I'm sorry, we won
50 of 100, right?
Yeah. Without David Wright for a good part of that time, without Jonathan Neese for a good part of that time, without Bobby Parnell for a good part of that time, without Matt Harvey for a good part of that time. So, yeah, I think it's conceivable that even without Matt Harvey, we can do that. I mean, ironically, as well as Matt pitched, unfortunately, we didn't win that many of his games.
No, that was very strange. Almost freakish how many of them you didn't win.
Yeah, and, of course, that you wouldn't expect he continued to pitch at that level of excellence that would continue. But unfortunately, that was the situation this year.
No question. So the word for the Met fan is what in a word as you go down to your meetings? He should expect what? An aggressive free agent, an aggressive offseason?
Well, we're going to be aggressive, and we're going to play the market and see what's there. And I think an important thing to keep in mind is that we've gone through the last 3 years trying to clear payroll, trying to, acquire and develop talent and win games, but without sacrificing the longer-term view. I think now we're entering a new phase where the short-term becomes somewhat, not overwhelmingly, but somewhat more important than long-term. And that's how we're going to go at it.
The future is now.
Yes.
All right. Thanks very much.